The coon fell onto its back and writhed. Blood gushed from the base of its spine. Atty watched as Rankin tried to approach the animal from the side, but the wicked claws swiping the air in wide arcs prevented him from approaching close enough to strike. Paxton raised his sword, blade pointing downward, and launched himself at the beast, running toward its damaged rear. Without warning, the coon snarled and whipped around to face the soldier. Atty screamed a warning, but one enormous, hand-like paw reached for the second before he had the chance to retreat. Instead, Paxton tried to duck. The paw swiped at him, missing his head, but catching the man's shoulder. Paxton hit the ground and slid several feet through the muddy undergrowth. Atty looked down to see the animal's back. She aimed right at where she believed the neck and spine met, and prayed the arrow would penetrate that far. A figure jumped on the creature and dug in, holding on with both hands as the coon realized it had a rider. Too late to prevent herself from firing, Atty managed to lift her bow a microsecond before the arrow left the bow. The metal barb plunged into the top of the soft, sensitive part of its nose, and the animal reared up on its hind legs as it screamed in agony. For a second, Rankin managed to keep his grip as he dangled from the thing's back. The coon reached to pluck out the arrow, giving the ex-mercenary the chance he'd been seeking. Pulling out his sword, he plunged it hard into the animal's backbone, and the piercing cry nearly broke her eardrums. It stood up again, but this time the coon deliberately threw itself on its back. Rankin tried to leap away, but the creature landed on top of him with a loud, ground-shaking whoomp. Atty began firing at the soft underbelly. She had to dispatch the coon as quickly as possible so she could go to the two men and check their injuries. Tears threatened to blur her vision, and she hastily wiped them away with the back of her wrist. She didn't want to believe Paxton and Rankin was dead. She couldn't let herself believe it. In the back of her mind, she wondered how she was going to get both of them back to the compound if they were critically injured. But first, she had to kill the coon. To hell with the meat. The animal rolled over. Its fur was blood-soaked, and it moved sluggishly. Atty paused to look for Rankin, but the beast blocked all sight of him. The coon peered up at her and bared its fangs. Less than 10 feet separated them. Knocking one of her last 2 arrows, Atty aimed for the beast's remaining eye. The last thing she expected was for the animal to launch itself at her, its arm extended, a fingered hand with its long claws reaching. The moment she fired, she knew she'd missed. The coon hit the branch where she was standing. Atty felt her feet leave the branch, and she scrambled to grab another limb to prevent herself from falling. In the next instant, the paw struck her, slamming her sideways against the tree trunk. Atty felt a black haze drop over her like a hot, wet blanket. The last thing she saw was the beast's snout looming downward, its jaws open. Panting heavily, the coon nosed all 3 bodies lying motionless in the clearing. It was dazed and in intense pain, but it was also hungry. Making a decision, it picked up one body in its jaws and proceeded to carry it away to feast on it later.